I don't know if my parents are involved. I think if they are, then they should come clean.
Mustang, this is Voodoo 3. Remaining MiGs are bugging out.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. That was a clip from Top Gun. At the end of it you hear American servicemen cheering. Are the true crime community cheering or jeering at the prospect of the villain's parents moving out of their home and in a sense losing their home? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Like, share, leave a comment, and let's get started. So there seems to have been a change in spirit from the Laundries, Chris and Roberta, as if they've made a decision and they're now acting on it. That decision appears not only to be to say goodbye to their home, well, what used to be a home, I think it's a house to them now, a house they want to get rid of, a house they want to dispose of, but perhaps in a sense they want to put some space, some distance between Brian as well. You must remember the memory they have of him now, the sort of recent things that have happened aren't pleasant. The things that he's been associated with, accused of, also the way that he was recovered. It's suddenly, you must know that if this whole story seems tragic and tragically unfathomable to us, and also quite grotesque in some ways, you must know what it must feel like to them. It's something that is almost unbearable, I guess. It's something that is just there's just no silver lining to it. It's a very sad story, but can you imagine what it feels like to these parents to have this devastating event happen to them, right? And so I do think there's been a change of spirit from the Laundries, and they took a walk in the woods yesterday, that's Tuesday, in the Mayakahatchee Creek Reservation. But I don't think it was the area, it was nothing like the waterlogged area where their son's remains were retrieved on October 20th. That's now more than a month ago. So one wonders, what were they doing there? Were they going to the park, but not the same area, much more wooded area, to sort of get out of the house? Or was there some other significance to their trip there? And you must know what it's like, even going to this secluded area, the media followed them there. Were they aware of that? Or did they try and get there without being followed, kind of thing? And so in a weird way, they are kind of fugitives from the media. That's the sort of the residual effect of this case, certainly on their lives. You don't have any of the same kind of scrutiny on Gabby Petito's parents, right? So it is possible that they were saying goodbye to the area Brian not only grew up in, but the family spent time in. That is, I think, one possibility. I do wonder whether their visit to the park didn't have some symbolic significance for them. You might think that they would go to the area where they last saw him, but that would be a area where they would likely run into other sort of true crime junkies and people with cell phones and that sort of thing. So perhaps they wanted to symbolically say goodbye inside the park, but just a different part of it. And that brings us to the for sale sign on the house. I think putting the house up for sale, bear in mind their home was situated just 5 miles from the site where Brian's skeletal remains were found. That also, I think, has symbolic significance for his parents. I think if you bear in mind the way that Brian was found, you know, a lot of people see something suspicious in the parents being there and all that kind of thing. But if you take it on a purely human scale, this scenario where Brian disappears, the parents know that he's armed, they're concerned about him, all of that concern turns out to be completely justified. And worse even than that, they actually find him in a way. You know, it's not as though someone knocks on their door and tells them, you know, that they found Brian. And there's some sort of separation in that, some filtering and, in a sense, censoring of reality, the full brunt of reality, when you get this message. And I've been in that situation where I was told about someone close to me, and I didn't actually see the scene myself. And I don't know, in some ways, perhaps you need closure in terms of seeing the scene yourself, but I also think it is triply disturbing, because you are kicking against the wall or the door of reality, based on, there's this sort of silence around the thing that you have seen with your own eyes, and now you are left with the rest of your life to try and find out why, and to speculate on what one could have done differently and what really happened. And so one thing that I think is perhaps a comfort to them is that they have each other. Chris has Roberta, and Roberta has Chris, within these, horrible circumstances for them. But I do think the grisly discovery, them being at the center of it, that is something they want to put behind them. And it's something that didn't happen long ago. It was just a month ago. And so the timing of what is happening now, putting the house up for sale shortly after the private funeral, shortly before Christmas, perhaps shows that the parents want to put an unfortunate chapter behind them as soon as they possibly can. And can you blame them? Bear in mind, they also have a daughter, Cassie, who probably lives kind of around the corner. One wonders whether they're going to move to a different part of Northport, to a different part of Florida, or out of state. One also wonders, what is the relationship now between the Laundries and Cassie? I don't know how likely it is that they will continue living in Northport, given the fact that they were also photographed shopping in Walmart. Bear in mind, the whole neighborhood has gotten to know them in Northport. The neighbors and residents of a city of about 70,000 plus have gotten to know the Laundries, and perhaps not in a good way. Perhaps when they walk around, there are remarks and that sort of thing. And perhaps they think if they go somewhere else, it's not clear where, there will be a different perception. One wonders whether they would even leave the country. But is that practical, given the legal situation they may find themselves in? So, but the fact that the media are sort of journaling all their movements on a, I won't say daily basis, but on a continuous basis, it means their infamy in the area continues, and they probably want to go back to some kind of scenario that is like their normal life. Something else that I think is just worth noting is, if you look at these images of the Laundries, how old they are compared to Gabby Petito's parents. I mean, their son Brian is about the same age as Gabby, but they are much older parents than Gabby's parents. Quite interesting, isn't it? So these images of the Laundries shopping at Walmart, they don't seem particularly newsworthy. It seems nosy and paparazzi-like, doesn't it? And this is something that the Laundries probably want to get away from. Should we, the true crime community, whoop and clap hands that the Laundries are bugging out? Should we celebrate it as some kind of small victory? Because they chose to remain silent when most of America demanded answers means there's nothing like the kind of sympathy afforded to them compared to Gabby's family. Yet you do have to feel for them. If you were in that situation, would you have turned in your flesh and blood, or would you have tried to protect them? Well, I think most of us hope that we'd never be in that situation to begin with. Brian killed his fiancée, not them. Brian killed himself, not them. And now there are even some conspiracy theories around that particular area. I'm not going to give voice to that because I think they're pretty absurd. But in his fugitive absence, they reaped the whirlwind. Losing their son, losing their daughter-in-law, and then losing their own home right before Christmas and in the middle of a pandemic, there's got to feel like a really bad run of bad luck in a really bad year. And they're probably not going to get fair value for that home either. My impression of the Laundries are of reserved folk who like nature and like to read, but they also have strong feelings about things. and can stick to a script if they choose to. It's also interesting that Chris Laundrie owns 10 firearms. So where to next? Perhaps they'll return to Long Island. I think one of the best predictors of where they may go is where they've been. Or perhaps they'll disappear as best they can to somewhere obscure where they can live a quiet life, fugitives from the media. What might law enforcement make of this? I think that depends whether charges will be forthcoming or not. We ought to know for sure the answer to this by Christmas. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.